We didn't raise you to abandon your family. That was the last sentence my mother ever said to my face. For 13 years, my mother had pretended to be too sick to leave her bedroom, while I, her oldest daughter, raised the other 7 children she chose to have, starting when I was 9 years old. The cruise was already booked. 2 weeks. Caribbean. Just for them. My finals were that same week. 4 exams in 5 days. The schedule was on the fridge. The bedroom door upstairs hadn't opened for me in 3 days. The suitcase by the front door had a luggage tag with my father's name on it. Russell Sinclair, Embassy Suites, Miami, Pier 4. She told me I was selfish. She told me I was abandoning my family. She told me my sisters would remember me as the one who left. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I went upstairs and finished writing. When my father came down at 6 the next morning, there was an envelope on his suitcase. He read the first line. He closed it. If this story is already hitting you in the chest, please take a second to like and subscribe. It helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. And drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. I'm Veronica Sinclair, 22, and this is the story of the envelope I left on my father's suitcase the morning my parents were supposed to fly to the Caribbean. Let me take you back 13 years. To the spring my mother became my mother. The morning before I left, I was making oatmeal for 7 children. The kitchen clock said 5:45. The window over the sink showed the cracked driveway, the dent in our mailbox, the orange porch light I'd installed myself when I was 14, because my mother said the old one was too bright for her headaches. Lucas and Lily, the twins, came down first. They always came down first. 13 years old. Identical brown eyes, identical question marks on their faces every morning. Vero, can you do the brown sugar thing? Lily said. The brown sugar thing meant a small spoonful packed on the top of the oatmeal, melted in by the time they sat down. I had been doing the brown sugar thing since Lily was 3. Already did, I said. Audrey, 11, came down with her hair in a half-finished braid. Owen, 9, was still in pajamas. Ivy, 7, was holding her library book like it was a baby. Theo, 5, was crying because he couldn't find his other sock. Poppy, 4, was already at the table eating cereal with her hands. From upstairs, my mother's voice came down through the vent. Soft, patient, practiced. Vero, baby, can you bring my tea up? I made the tea. I poured it into the chipped mug. I put the mug on a tray with 2 pieces of dry toast and a bottle of her vitamins. I carried the tray to the bottom of the stairs. I set it on the 3rd step from the bottom. I did not go up. She would come down for it when she heard the front door close. Lucas noticed my father's suitcase first. He was always the noticer. Vero, where's Dad going? My father had left for work at 5. He was a contractor. He left every morning at 5. He had not stopped to say goodbye. On a trip, I said. Lily looked at me. Lily was always the one who looked at me. Both of them? Yes. For how long? 2 weeks. The table went very quiet. Owen put down his spoon. Audrey looked at her braid. And you'll watch us? Lily said. I stopped stirring the pot. My phone buzzed on the counter. Wyatt. I'll be in town tonight. Ready when you are. I picked up the phone and texted back one word. Yes. I sat down. I looked at the 7 of them. I looked at the kitchen I had built breakfast in for 13 years. "Not this time," I said. Audrey said, "What does that mean?" I said, "It means I love you. Eat your oatmeal." I went upstairs to my room. I took down my 4th notebook from the shelf behind the door. I opened it to today's page. I wrote one line. May 4th, 2025. They leave tomorrow. I am leaving with them. I closed the notebook. I put it in my backpack. I went back downstairs and finished the brown sugar thing for Lily. The first sibling I raised when I was 9. Lucas and Lily came home from the hospital in April 2012. My mother walked through the front door, sat down on the couch, and did not get up for 3 weeks. My father did not know what to do. He worked construction. He drove out to a site at 5 in the morning and came back at 8 at night. The babies cried at all hours. I was in 4th grade. I learned to make a bottle by reading the instructions on the back of the formula can. I learned that you have to test the milk on the inside of your wrist before you give it to a baby, because if it is too hot, you can burn their mouth. I learned that when a newborn cries at 3 in the morning, sometimes they are hungry, and sometimes they are wet, and sometimes there is no reason at all. You hold them anyway. I asked my father once when Mom was going to be okay again. He said, "The doctor says we just have to be patient." The doctor said that for 13 years. My mother had something real. I want to say that out loud. She had postpartum depression after the twins. It was real. It was not her fault. It was not anybody's fault. She should have been put on medication. She should have been put in therapy. She should have been pulled out of bed by someone who loved her. Instead, my father worked, and I learned to make bottles. By the time my mother was diagnosed with anything by a real doctor, the diagnosis didn't matter anymore, because by then she had become the person she was pretending to be. Untreated, the role had eaten the person. But the part nobody in our house ever said out loud was this: my mother was never too sick for pregnancy announcements, church photos, or the soft congratulations people gave women with another baby in their arms. She was only too sick for the work that came after. The babies kept arriving. The bedroom door kept closing. And every time it closed, one more child became mine to wake, feed, dress, calm, carry, and explain the world to. Audrey was born in June 2014. I was 11. My mother stayed in bed for 4 months. I rode my bike to the grocery store on Wednesday afternoons because that was the day they marked down the bread. I learned a bargain. I learned what a coupon was. I learned how much 3 pounds of ground beef cost compared to 2 pounds of chicken thighs. On March 12th, 2014, I started a notebook. I didn't know why at the time. I think I just wanted somebody to know what was happening, even if it was only future me. The first entry was 3 lines. Cooked dinner for Lucas, Lily, Audrey. Mom in bed all day. Dad came home at 9. The handwriting was a child's. Big round letters. I had not yet learned cursive. The notebook ran out of pages in August 2017. I started a second one, then a third, then a fourth. In 9th grade, the school produced Our Town. I was supposed to play Emily. I had been at every rehearsal for 2 months. The day of dress rehearsal, Audrey spiked a fever of 104. I tried to call my mother. She did not answer. I tried to call my father. He was on a roof with no signal. I called an Uber. I carried Audrey to the curb. I sat in the emergency room for 6 hours holding a children's Tylenol bottle, alternating cool compresses on her forehead the way I had taught myself. The director called me from the auditorium at 7:30. "Veronica, where are you?" I said, "My sister is sick, I'm sorry." He said, "There's no understudy." I said, "I know. I missed the play. I never auditioned for another one." Thanksgiving, 2018. I was 15. We had 5 siblings by then. I had been planning the meal for 3 weeks. I made the turkey from a recipe I clipped out of a magazine. I made mashed potatoes, green beans, and 2 pies, apple and pecan. The pecan came out a little burned around the edge. I cried in the pantry for 1 minute, then I came out. My mother came downstairs as everyone sat down. She was wearing the cardigan she always wore for company. She made my father take a picture of her at the head of the table holding a serving spoon. She posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Thankful for my big family." I deleted the picture from my phone the same night. When I took the SAT my junior year, I scored 1,500. My mother did not ask my score. My father asked, "Good?" I said yes. He nodded and went back to his sandwich. When I started my period at 12, I taught myself what to do from a pamphlet that came home in Audrey's diaper bag. I bought the supplies with my own babysitting money, not the babysitting I did for my siblings, but the kind I had to sneak in for the Halverson family 3 houses down on Friday nights, while Lily watched my actual brothers and sisters until I got home. When I went to junior prom, I made my own dress out of a thrift store curtain because there was no money for one. My mother had been promising to pay for prom for months. The day before, she said she could not because there were just too many kids. I went anyway. A boy from my history class drove me. I came home at 11:30, took off the dress, and was up at 4 in the morning feeding Theo, who had croup. When I graduated high school as salutatorian, I gave a 5-minute speech about resilience. My mother did not come. She said the auditorium lights would trigger a migraine. My father came. He sat in the back row in his work clothes. He left during the applause. I found a sticky note on the dashboard of my car after the ceremony in his small block handwriting. It said, "Good job," and nothing else. That was my childhood. That was the first volume of my notebook. I met Wyatt in November 2023. It was a Tuesday. My father's truck had been making a tapping noise for a week. He told me to drop it at Donnelly Auto Repair on my way to campus. I had never been to a repair shop alone. I parked. I went in. The waiting room smelled like coffee and rubber. A man came out of the bay wiping his hands on a red rag. He was about my age, maybe a little older, tall, quiet. A thin scar over his right eyebrow. "Sinclair," he said. "Veronica, the truck is my dad's. "Wanna wait or want me to call you?" I had 2 hours before my Renaissance drama seminar. I had no homework with me. I almost said, "Call me." I said, "I'll wait." He nodded. He didn't ask any other questions. He went back into the bay. I sat with my hands in my lap for 40 minutes. There was a paperback on the side table. Hemingway. Someone had folded the page on a paragraph about a woman crossing a hotel lobby. He came back at 90 minutes in. He sat down in the chair across from me. "It's the alternator. I'll have it for you in an hour." "Okay. You want coffee?" "Yes." He brought me a cup. It was bad coffee. I drank it anyway. He sat down again. "You study what?" he said. "English literature." He thought about it. Like what, Shakespeare? I laughed. The sound surprised me. I had not laughed in 2 months. Sometimes, I said. Sometimes Cather, sometimes Toni Morrison, sometimes a tax form, depending on the day. He laughed too. He had a quiet laugh. When the truck was done, he asked if I wanted to grab fries at the diner across the street. I had not eaten a meal I did not cook for somebody since I was 9. I said yes. We sat in a vinyl booth for an hour. He told me he had grown up in Cedar Rapids. He told me his mother had died of breast cancer when he was 16, and his father had not handled it well. He told me he started fixing cars because his uncle taught him, and the noise of the lift drowned out the noise in his head. I told him almost nothing about myself. I told him I was the oldest of 8. I told him my finals were soon. He nodded. He did not press. He drove me home at 9. He pulled up at the corner of my block. He could see the house through the trees, and I think he understood without being told. I'll be at the shop tomorrow, he said. I came back 2 Tuesdays later. Then the Tuesday after that. 2 months in, Wyatt noticed that all my textbooks were secondhand. He noticed because I dropped one on the floor of his truck and the spine cracked at a place where someone had highlighted the entire page with green marker. "Why don't you buy new ones?" he said. I said, "Because my mother doesn't pay for them and I don't have enough hours too." He didn't ask why my mother didn't pay for them. He called the bookstore the next day. He told them to put my account on his card. He told them not to tell me. They did not tell me for 14 months. Then a clerk slipped, and I knew. I did not say anything to Wyatt. I waited 2 weeks. One Sunday afternoon, I told him I knew. He said, "Don't make it a thing." I said, "I love you." He said, "Yeah, same." One night, walking from his truck to my porch at 11 o'clock, my mother was waiting on the steps in her bathrobe. I could see the lit cigarette in her hand. She did not smoke. She lit cigarettes when she wanted to look like a person who was suffering. She did not look at Wyatt. She looked through him. "Don't get attached, Veronica," she said. "They need you here. You're the only one who can do it." I did not answer. I went inside. I stood at the kitchen window for 12 minutes looking at Wyatt's headlights on the corner. He did not pull away. He waited. When I lifted the curtain a second time, he tipped his finger off the brim of his cap. In the spring, Wyatt asked me what kind of food I liked. I had to think about it for a long time. I had cooked for my siblings every night for 13 years. I had not asked myself what I liked since I was 8 years old. I told him I did not know. He said, "Okay, we'll figure it out." He started bringing me one new thing every Tuesday. Vietnamese pho, Korean barbecue, a bagel from a deli with a real water bagel, a pierogi, a Cuban sandwich. He never asked if I liked it before I tried. He just set it in front of me and watched my face. I learned in that order that I liked salty things, that I did not like spicy things, that I loved good bread, and that I had been eating my whole childhood without ever asking what I actually wanted. In the summer, I started spending 2 nights a week at his place above the garage. It was a small studio. There was a futon and a hot plate. He had wired one shelf with a single warm bulb so I could read at night without the overhead light hurting my eyes. I would lie on the futon with one of my course books open and a fan blowing. He would be downstairs with the radio on, working on a brake job. The shop hummed. The air smelled like motor oil. For the first time in my life, I could read for an hour without anyone needing me. I cried the first time it happened, quietly, with my face turned into the pillow. Wyatt came up at midnight to check on me. He saw the wet spot on the pillowcase. He did not ask. He sat at the end of the futon. He put one hand on my ankle. He stayed there until I fell asleep. In September 2024, I went to Professor Holloway's office hours. She was the chair of the English Lit department. She was 58. She wore the same gray cardigan every day with a different pin. That week, the pin was a small enamel bee. I told her I wanted to write my senior thesis on parentification in 20th century American literature. She set down her pen, she took off her glasses. She looked at me a long time. "Veronica," she said, "are you choosing this academically or personally?" The room got very quiet. The radiator clicked. I did not answer. She nodded slowly. She put her glasses back on. "All right," she said. "Bring me an outline by Friday." I left her office and went back to my dorm. I sat on my bed for 10 minutes. Then I got up and went to the storage box at the back of my closet. I took out the first notebook. I had not opened it in 4 years. The cover was bent. The spine was held together with a rubber band that had hardened into a dry crack. I sat on the floor with my back against the closet door. I opened it. March 12th, 2014. Cooked dinner for Lucas, Lily, Audrey, Mom in bed all day. Dad came home at 9. The handwriting was a child's. I had never seen that sentence as an adult. I read it 3 times. I read the next line. June 4th, 2014. Audrey ear infection. Drove to urgent care with Mrs. Halverson because Mom was crying. Got drops. I read another. August 2nd, 2015. Lucas fell off bunk bed. Stitches. Mom said she couldn't go because the lights hurt. Dad on job site. Drove with neighbor. I kept reading. When I got to the end of the first notebook, my whole body was shaking. I went into the dorm bathroom and locked the stall. I sat down on the toilet seat lid. I cried for 22 minutes. My roommate knocked. "Vero, you okay?" "Yes," I said. "I'm okay." I was not okay. I had thought all my life that the notebooks were a child's diary. A funny habit. A thing I kept doing because I had started it once. They were not a diary. They were evidence. I had been collecting evidence on myself for 13 years. I went back to my desk that night, and I read every page of every notebook. I did not stop. I did not eat. My roommate brought me a granola bar at midnight and set it next to my hand without asking what I was reading. The second notebook covered ages 13 to 16. There were entries that read like dispatches from a soft, slow war. Lily fell off her bike. 20 stitches in the knee. Drove her to urgent care. Mom said her head hurt too much for fluorescent lights. Halloween. Made costumes for 6 kids out of pillowcases and pipe cleaners. Mom did not come downstairs to see them. Took photos with my phone so they would have a memory. The third notebook covered 16 to 19. Owen broke his collarbone on the trampoline. Stayed home from prom to take care of him. Mom said it would be selfish to leave at a time like this. Ivy started kindergarten. I packed her lunch and walked her in. Her teacher asked who I was. I said her sister. The teacher said the way I had said it, she thought I might be her mom. I let her think it. The fourth notebook covered 19 to now. The handwriting in that one was tired. I could see it on the page. The letters slanted further to the right with each year, like they were leaning toward a finish line. I went back to my desk. I opened my laptop. I started typing. When daughters become mothers without consent. By the time Holloway saw the outline on Friday, I had 32 pages of notes. She read it. She read it a second time. She set it down. She said, "This is the most painful thing I have read this year. I have one note for you." Yes? Keep going. That fall, I wrote every weekend. I went home only when I absolutely had to. I told my mother I had a writing tutor on Saturdays. I told her I had a study group on Sundays. I told her I had to take an extra shift at my work study, which I did not have. She did not check. Now, before I go on, if you grew up too soon, I want you to tell me something in the comments. What did the rest of your family call it? Did they call it being responsible? Did they call it being mature? Did they call it your gift? I want to hear those words back because if you're like me, you probably never realized that the words they used were how they made the work invisible. Drop them below. I'm reading all of them. In February 2025, I started preparing the leaving. The first thing I did was photocopy. I went to the Kinko's near campus. I laid the first page of my first notebook on the glass, the page from March 12th, 2014, and I made one copy. Then I took the most recent page of my fourth notebook and laid it next to the first one on the glass. I made one more copy. I put them side by side on the same sheet of A4 paper. 11-year-old printing on the left, 22-year-old cursive on the right. The same sentences 13 years apart. Cooked dinner, mom in bed. I folded the page in thirds and put it in my desk drawer. The second thing I did was call my Aunt Patrice. Patrice was my father's older sister. She was 52. She was a nurse at Mercy, Iowa City. She had been kept out of our house for 11 years. 11 years before Patrice had come to a Sunday dinner. Audrey was a baby then. I was 11. Patrice had watched me feed Audrey, change Audrey, burp Audrey, walk Audrey, and put Audrey down for a nap. Then she had pulled my mother aside in the kitchen and said quietly, "Bernadette, she is 11. My mother told her never to come back. Patrice still sent a birthday card every year. The cards had $20 bills in them. The cards came to my school address, not the house. I called her from a bench outside the library. Her phone rang once. She picked up on the third second of the second ring. Vero, I've been waiting for this call for 9 years. What do you need?" I said, "I might need to stay with you a few weeks. Your bed is already made." I sat on the bench for a while after that. The third thing happened to me. I didn't have to do it. Wyatt sat me down at the diner on the third Sunday in February. He looked nervous. "I did a thing," he said. "Okay." I signed a lease. On the garage? On an apartment. I waited. In Cedar Rapids. 2 bedrooms. There's a window over the sink that faces east. I paid 6 months up front. I did not say anything. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel like you had to," he said. "It's there if you want it. It's there if you don't. Either way, you don't have to keep paying for the bookstore." I said, "Show me." He showed me. The window over the sink did face east. The kitchen had 2 chairs and a small round table. There was a built-in shelf in the living room. He had not bought any other furniture. He had been waiting to ask me what I wanted. I went home that night and added one line to the notebook. February 16th, 2025. Wyatt rented us a kitchen. In March, I sent my thesis to the binder. The binder was a small shop on Lynn Street with a cat that slept on the counter. The owner took the manuscript, looked at me over his glasses, and said, "Hardcover or paperback?" "Hardcover." "How many?" "2. He noted it down. "Personal inscription?" "Yes. Where would you like it placed?" "Page 3, Roman numeral 3, centered. No font change." "Print or italic?" "Print." "Read it back to me." I read it to him. He wrote it down word for word and read it back. He set the page proof beside the cash register and asked me to look at the spacing. To my 7 siblings, who are not my children, and to my mother, who was, though she has never known me. I looked at it for a long time. I said yes. The 2 hardcovers were ready in 3 weeks. I gave one to Holloway. I kept the other. Holloway called me into her office the day after she finished it. "Your dedication," she said. "You wrote it for your defense, not for your family." "Yes." "Is that on purpose?" "Yes." "Good." She tapped the cover once. "Because I'm reading it at commencement." I stared at her. She said, "Each year I pick one. This year it's yours. You don't have to agree." "But I would like to." I said yes. I spent that whole week writing 7 letters by hand. 1 to Lucas, 1 to Lily, 1 to Audrey, 1 to Owen, 1 to Ivy, 1 to Theo, 1 to Poppy. I put each one in an envelope with the child's name. I put all 7 in a shoebox. I drove the shoebox to Aunt Patrice's house on a Saturday and asked her to give them to the kids if anything happened to me, or, more likely, when they came, of an age where they could decide for themselves what to do with them. She took the shoebox. She did not open it. She set it on the top shelf of her hall closet behind a stack of nursing textbooks. That night, May 3rd, I sat at my desk in the apartment Wyatt had rented. I sealed the envelope I would leave on my father's suitcase. Inside the envelope, I put 4 things. Inside the envelope, I put 5 things. The A4 sheet with 2 pieces of handwriting. My final exam schedule for the week of May 5th. The address in Cedar Rapids. A folded piece of paper with 1 sentence written on it. And 1 final instruction, written underneath in block letters. The notebooks are on my bed. Start with the first blue one. I am not the mother of these children. Below is the proof. The notebooks are upstairs. The keys are on the counter. I sealed the envelope with packing tape so it could not be resealed. On the front, in block letters, I wrote, "Deed. Open this first." I went to bed at 1 in the morning. I did not sleep. The Saturday before they were due to fly out, I asked for 1 day with the kids. I told my mother I wanted, a goodbye semester day. I said it like that, goodbye semester, so it sounded like college, not like leaving. She said fine, as long as she didn't have to do anything. She did not do anything. I made pancakes shaped like animals. I had taught myself how to do this when I was 12, watching a video on the family laptop. Lucas got a bear, Lily got a swan, Audrey got an elephant, Owen got a turtle, Ivy got a cat. Theo got a dinosaur, which was just a slightly lumpy oval, and he loved it. Poppy got a heart. We ate at the kitchen table. The whole house was warm with butter and syrup. Owen showed me a math problem from his homework, long division, a thing I had taught him in 3rd grade. I made him do the first step in his head and then drew the second step on a napkin. He nodded and said, "Okay," and went back to his pancake. Ivy showed me the page in her library book where the cat finds the mitten in the snow. I had read her that book on a Thursday 2 years ago when she had pink eye. She still remembered that I had used a special voice for the cat. She made me do the voice again. I did the voice. Theo laughed so hard he snorted syrup onto his shirt. Audrey said, "Vera, will you live with us when you're a teacher?" I said, "I'm not going to be a teacher, sweetheart. I'm going to be a tutor. It's close. I'll be close." "How close?" 45 minutes. "Is that far?" "It's a song and a half on the radio." She nodded, satisfied. Lily got up halfway through breakfast and went into her room. She came back with a folded piece of paper. She put it next to my plate. She did not say anything. I unfolded it. She had drawn a woman in a chair, reading a book. There was a baby on the woman's lap. The woman had brown hair and small round earrings like mine. Lily had labeled the woman. The label said Mom. The M was crooked. The O was a perfect circle. The M at the end leaned to the right. I looked at it for 6 full seconds. Then I looked up. I said, "Lily, I'm your sister." She said, "I know." She said, "I just wanted to draw who you really are." I folded the drawing in half. I folded it again. I held it in my lap for the rest of breakfast. When everyone had finished and Theo had spilled syrup down his shirt and Poppy had asked for a second heart, I went into my room and put the drawing in the front of my 4th notebook. I wrote on the page next to it, May 3rd, 2025. Lily called me Mom. She's right. That ends tomorrow. Wyatt came at 7 that night. We were supposed to go to dinner. I brought the drawing to show him. He looked at it for a minute. He did not speak. Then he handed it back. He said, "Bring it to the new place. Frame it. Hang it where you can see it every morning." I said, "Okay." He said, "Veronica." "Yes?" "You can stop being their mom now, but you're still going to be their sister. That doesn't go away. And it shouldn't." He looked at the drawing one more time. "And the other thing," he said, "when Lily figures out in 5 years that she got that wrong, when she figures out that you were a sister and not a mother, she's going to be embarrassed. She's going to apologize. You're going to tell her she doesn't need to. And then you're going to keep this drawing in the kitchen anyway. Because you and I both know what it cost her to be allowed to think you were her mom for 13 years. I sat in the truck for a minute before I closed the door. Then I closed it. I asked him where we were going for dinner. He said, "Whatever you want, salty, not spicy, good bread." I said, "A good bread." He drove us to the bakery in Mount Vernon that he had been trying to take me to for a month. We sat at the counter. We ate a focaccia sandwich with tomato jam and 3 kinds of cheese. I ate slowly. I ate like a person who did not have to be home in 40 minutes. I ate like a person who had been allowed to choose. The night of May 4th, my mother came down the stairs. She had not been on the first floor in 2 weeks. She came down in her good nightgown, the one with embroidered roses on the collar that she only ever wore in front of company. It was 8 o'clock. The kids were upstairs in bed. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The cup said World's OKest Dad on it. Lucas had bought it at a school fundraiser when he was 8. My father drank coffee out of it every night. My mother sat down across from him. She looked at the wall, not at him. I was washing the last dishes from dinner. She said, Veronica. I turned off the water. I dried my hands. I sat down at the table. She said, your father told me about your final exam excuse. I said, it's not an excuse, they're my finals. She did not raise her voice. That was the worst part. She did not raise her voice the entire conversation. She spoke the way you speak to a child who has accidentally hurt your feelings. She said, but we didn't raise you to abandon your family. I did not say anything. She said, do you know how hard the last few months have been on me? You've been so absent, so short with me. I did not say anything. She said, you were the strong one. That was our gift to you. I did not say anything. She said, Patrice put this in your head, didn't she? I looked at my father. My father looked at his coffee. She said, I have been a good mother. I have been a present mother. Maybe not in the ways you needed, Vero, but in the ways I could. You don't know what it's been like in this body. You don't know what it's been like in this head. I gave you 7 brothers and sisters. 7. People used to write us up in the church bulletin for that. People used to stop me in the grocery store. They would say, Bernadette, you are a saint. I would smile, and I would not correct them because I am a private person and I do not need credit. But I want you to know it has been a kind of work that you do not understand yet. Maybe when you have children of your own. She paused. You can take your finals from here. We talked to your professors about extensions before. You know they always say yes. Iowa is reasonable. The cruise is non-refundable. The kids will be heartbroken. You can do this for us. She let that sit. Then she said the line, selfish. That's what your sisters will remember. Selfish. The one who left when she was needed. She waited for me to argue, to cry, to apologize. I looked at my father one more time. He still did not look up. The cup said, World's okayest dad. The handle was chipped. His thumb was pressed against the chip the way it always was, as if the chip were the most interesting part of any room he ever sat in. I thought about everything I could say. I could say, you haven't been a present mother. You have been a present sickness. I could say, the kids you call yours, I call mine, and I am tired. I could say the kindest thing I ever did for you was stop telling people what was actually in this house. I could say, tell me one meal you made this year. Tell me one bedtime story. Tell me one school project. I could say, Patrice didn't put anything in my head. The notebook did. I did not say any of it. What I had learned over the years was that my mother needed an argument to feel real. An argument was oxygen for the sick roll. If I argued, she would have something to recover from. If I cried, she would have something to forgive. If I apologized, she would have something to remember at the next holiday. The cruelest thing I could do to her was not the loudest thing. It was the quietest. I stood up. I said, thank you for dinner. We had not eaten dinner together. There had been no dinner. I walked upstairs. I went into my room. I took the envelope out of my desk drawer. I checked the tape. I checked the 4 things inside one last time. I checked the name on the front. I came back downstairs at 5 a.m. My father had not gone to bed. I could tell because his coffee cup was upside down on the dish rack and still warm. The suitcase was waiting by the front door. Big black hard shell. Luggage tag swinging. I set the envelope on the top of the suitcase. I set the house key on top of the envelope. Before I opened the front door, I texted Patrice one sentence. "It's today." She replied in less than a minute. "I'm on my way to the house." I stared at the words until I believed them. Then I deleted the thread from the lock screen, not because I was ashamed, but because my mother had trained this house to treat backup as betrayal. I opened the front door. The morning was cold. Wyatt was at the corner in his truck. The headlights were off. I closed the door behind me. I did not look back at the upstairs window. I got in the truck. He put one hand on the back of my neck. He didn't speak. He pulled away from the curb. At 6 o'clock, my father came downstairs. He saw the envelope. He saw his name on it in block letters. He picked it up. He opened it. He read the first line. March 12th, 2014. Cooked dinner for Lucas, Lily, Audrey. Mom in bed all day. He stood at the door for 40 seconds without moving. He closed the envelope. He did not call my mother down. He set the envelope on top of his suitcase. He went into the kitchen and started a fresh pot of coffee. At 6:18, he called Patrice. At 6:31, he canceled his seat to Miami. At 6:42, he called the airline again and left my mother's ticket untouched, because that was finally her decision to make. She did not use it. By 7:15, Patrice was in our kitchen making eggs for the children. By 8, the big black suitcase was still by the door. By 9, my father was upstairs sitting on the floor of my bedroom with the first blue notebook open across his knees. The cruise did not happen. For the first time in 13 years, neither did my replacement shift. Finals week was a blur of fluorescent lights, and Wyatt's truck idling at the curb of the English building. I took Renaissance drama on Monday. I took 20th century American novel on Tuesday. I took critical theory on Thursday. I took my senior seminar on Friday. Wyatt picked me up after every exam. He brought a small thermos of soup. He never asked me how I thought it went. He understood that the academic part was not the hard part. On Wednesday, my phone counted 41 missed calls. All my mother. 23 voicemails. I did not listen to any of them. I did listen to one. The first one, I listened to it once in the truck on the way to my Tuesday exam. It started with her crying, then it stopped crying, and went very quiet and very controlled. Then it said, "You are going to come home, and you're going to apologize, and you are going to take your exams from your bedroom, where your books are. You are going to do this, because if you do not do this, I will spend the rest of my life telling people what kind of daughter you turned out to be. I have 350 friends on Facebook. I will tell every one of them." I turned off the voicemail at the word 3. I have not listened to a voice from my mother since. My father did not call. My father did not text. My father did not exist on my phone that week. I was wrong about that. On Saturday morning, 3 days after I left, Wyatt called me from the garage. "He's here," Wyatt said. I said, "Who's here?" "Your dad. He's standing in front of the bay door." "Did he say anything?" "He said, 'Is she here?'" "Did you tell him?" "I told him you were studying at the apartment." "Did you tell him the address?" "He didn't ask." I went to the window of the apartment. I looked down at the street. 40 minutes later, my father's gray Ford F-150 pulled up across the street. He parked. He did not get out. He sat in the truck for 1 hour and 3 minutes. I timed it. He did not call the buzzer. He did not get out. He did not look up. I knew, watching him through the second-floor window, that he was reading. He had brought the notebook in the cab with him. I could not see the cover from the second floor, but I could see his hands, and his hands were turning pages. He was reading them at his own dashboard, in his own truck, across the street from his daughter's first apartment, on a Saturday morning in May. At one point, he put his hand over his eyes. Not for long, maybe 10 seconds. Then he put both hands on the steering wheel and read on. At the end of the hour, he closed the notebook. He set it on the passenger seat. He pulled away from the curb and drove back to Iowa City. That night, my mother found out he had gone to Cedar Rapids. I learned much later that they fought for the first time in 18 years. She said, "You went to her, you went to her." He said, "I read the rest of her notebook." She said, "Whose side are you on?" He said, "Bernie, there aren't sides. There's only what she did and what we let her do and what we said it was." She did not speak to him for 2 days. On Monday, May 12th, I got a text from a number that had texted me maybe 30 times in 22 years. It said, "I read the rest of your notebook. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times. I did not reply. On Thursday, May 15th, my mother posted a Facebook status. She used her public account, the one with 350 followers, mostly people from high school and church. The status said, "My oldest daughter is graduating from the University of Iowa this Saturday. I gave her everything. Please pray for our family." Friends from my old high school commented with congratulations and praying hands. A woman from the grocery store posted 3 flame emojis. A teacher I had liked in 5th grade wrote, "Bernadette, you must be so proud." Aunt Patrice did not comment. I did not comment. A new text came in at 9 in the evening. It was Lily. From a phone I assumed was Lucas's because Lily did not have her own phone. "Vero, are you okay?" "Mom is crying again." I sat on the edge of the bed in the Cedar Rapids apartment. Wyatt sat next to me without saying anything. I wrote back, "Yes, I love you. I'll see you Saturday." Saturday, May 17th, 11 in the morning. The Iowa Memorial Union Ballroom. The English Literature commencement. I sat in the second row of graduates. My cap was on straight because Wyatt had checked it 3 times in the apartment mirror. My gown was a little long. My hood was burgundy. My family came in 9 minutes before the ceremony started. Bernadette in a white blouse and gray skirt. My father in his only suit, which still had the dry cleaning tag clipped to the inside hem. Lucas in a hand-me-down sport coat. Lily in a dress. Audrey, Owen, Ivy, Theo, Poppy, all dressed up, hair brushed, shoes shined. I knew, looking at them, that nobody had done that for them. They had done it for each other. Lily had brushed Poppy's hair. Lucas had helped Theo with the buttons. They sat in row 2. My mother took the aisle seat. My father sat next to her. The kids filled the rest of the row. I had told Patrice to sit in row 3. I saw her. Gray pantsuit, small gold cross at her throat, over my left shoulder. She nodded. Wyatt was at the back. He had on a clean blue shirt and a tie I had picked out for him. The ceremony began. The dean of the College of Liberal Arts gave the opening address. 3 students received special awards. The names were called in alphabetical order. I had a small thrill in my chest when they got to the S's. Sinclair, I walked across the stage. I shook the dean's hand. I took my diploma. I turned to face the audience as instructed. My mother stood up. She lifted her phone to film me. She mouthed the word smile. I did not smile. I did not frown. I walked back to my seat. After the names were finished, Professor Holloway came to the podium for the closing remarks. She was wearing the gray cardigan, the bee pin. Her hair was in a low knot. She set a hardcover book on the lectern in front of her. The book had a plain blue cover. No title yet on the spine. She adjusted the microphone. Each year, she said, our department selects one senior thesis dedication to read aloud at the commencement ceremony. We weight it for craft, for vulnerability, and for what it asks the discipline to hold. This year, our choice was unanimous. She opened the book. She turned to page 3. She paused. She looked up over her glasses. She looked at the row of graduates. She found me. She did not look at row 2. From Veronica Sinclair, she said. English Literature, class of 2025. She paused again. To my 7 siblings, who are not my children. The room got very still. And to my mother who was, though she has never known me, there was no other sound. For 8 seconds, there was no other sound in the room. In row 2, my mother's mouth opened, then closed. She turned her head to look at my father. My father was not in row 2. He had stood up when Holloway opened the book. He had walked quietly to the foyer at the back of the ballroom. I had not seen him go. I learned this only later from Patrice, who turned and watched him. My mother stared at his empty chair for a long moment. Then she sat back down. She did not look around. She looked at her own lap. Lily, in the middle of the row, took Lucas's hand. Audrey leaned over and whispered, "Lily, what does that mean?" Lily said, "It's okay, I'll tell you later." In row 3, Patrice stood up. She started clapping. It was not the loud clap of a parent at a sports game. It was a slower clap, the kind people give at a poetry reading when they have just heard the line that wrecked them and they need to do something with their hands. Wyatt stood up at the back. He started clapping. 2 of my cohort, the ones who had read my thesis in workshop, stood up. They were not crying. They were standing like people who had been whatting to. A woman I did not know in row 5 stood up. She had a small embroidered flag pin on her jacket. I would never know who she was. She was somebody's mother. She was clapping for me on behalf of someone she could not clap for. In some other room, in some other year, a man in row 8 who looked like a grandfather took his hat off his lap and held it against his chest. He did not stand. He could not, I think. He was in a wheelchair. But the hat came off. Holloway, on the stage, set the book down. She stepped back from the lectern. She did not clap. She lowered her head. I think she had read the dedication out loud 6 times in her office before she could do it dry. I think she had given herself the right not to cry on the stage by paying it down in advance. Row by row, the room began to stand. It was not a standing ovation in the traditional sense. It was slower than that. It was the room rising, the way a room rises when something solemn has been said. And the right response is to be upright. My mother stayed seated. She kept her hands in her lap. She kept her eyes down. She could not stand up. I watched her try. I watched her bring her hands to the armrests and lift, and then settle back down. She could not stand up. She had been in bed for 13 years to avoid this exact moment, the moment when the room would look at her and not at her sickness. She had stayed in the bedroom upstairs for 13 years specifically, so that she would not have to be in a room like this one, where the truth was said by another woman with a B-pin and a podium, and where the people in the chairs were rising for somebody whose name was not Bernadette. She could not stand up because there was no sickness anymore. The sickness had been a coat she put on every morning for 13 years. She had taken it off only for photographs, and the room had just opened the closet door and shown everyone the coat. I walked off the stage when the dean signaled. I did not look at my mother. I looked at Patrice. Patrice had her right hand pressed flat over her own heart. The recessional started. The graduates filed out. I walked out a side door with my cohort. I found my father in the foyer. He was holding an unlit cigarette. He looked at me. He looked at the cigarette. He said, "First one in 18 years. I said, "Don't smoke it for me." He said, "I won't." He put the cigarette behind his ear. He looked down at the carpet. He looked back up. We looked at each other for maybe 4 seconds. He said, "I read the whole thing. The notebook, all 4 of them. She left them on your bed when you were gone, and I read them in one night." I said, "She left them on my bed." "Yeah, for you to find." He thought about that. He said, "I think so." I said, "She wanted you to know." He said, "I think she wanted me to be angry. I think she wanted me to throw them away. I think she thought I would defend her." I said, "Did you?" He shook his head once. He said, "I read them on the floor of your bedroom. I sat on the floor with my back to your bed. I started at March 12th, 2014, and I read until the last entry. There were 640 pages of dinners I did not cook. There were 1,100 fevers I did not take a temperature of. There were 300 mornings I left for work at 5 and you got up at 5:45. I counted. I'm not a man who counts, but I counted. I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know." He said, "What do I do?" I said, "You get the kids out of the house in the morning sometimes. You ask them how school was. You buy Lily a phone. You let Patrice come for Sunday dinner." He said, "And your mother?" I said, "I'm not going to tell you how to be married. I'm going to tell you how to be their father." He nodded. He put the cigarette in his pocket. Patrice came around the corner. She took my hand. Wyatt came up behind her. Patrice said, "I should have done more." I said, "You did enough, you stayed. If this story landed somewhere familiar, if you grew up holding a family that was never asked to hold you, I hope you hear this. Setting down what was never yours to carry is not abandonment. It's not selfishness. It's the first thing you've ever done for yourself that wasn't first done for someone else. The day you put it down is not the day you lose your family. It's the day you find out who they were ever willing to be without it." It is the middle of June now. The window over the kitchen sink in the Cedar Rapids apartment faces east, the way Wyatt promised. The light comes in clean. I am unpacking my books. The drawing from Lily is in a small white frame. I hung it over the toaster. The label still says Mom in 3 crooked letters. Next to it, on a single shelf, are 4 notebooks. too blue, too black. Their pages are uneven from being opened and closed and opened again. The fourth one is the thickest. It has Lily's drawing folded inside the front cover. The window over the sink has a small sticker on the bottom corner that the previous tenant left. It is a daisy. I have not peeled it off. I have decided I like it. I have decided I like small things now. I have already enrolled in a part-time master's program at the University of Iowa, taught remotely. I will start in the fall. I have already advertised the tutoring center in 2 local schools. A small storefront I am leasing from the same landlord who rents Wyatt the garage. I have 10 students lined up for July. 2 of them are the oldest siblings. My phone rings at 2:20. Lucas. I put it on speaker. I sat down at the small round table. "Hi, Vero," he says. "Hi, bud. Lily and I, we wanted to tell you we read the dedication." I close my eyes. "Okay." Mom hasn't come out of her room today. "Okay." Dad's on the porch. "Okay." He has been quiet for a long time. He says, "Vero, are we allowed to call you?" I say, "Whenever. As many times as you want. I'm not going to ask you to choose between me and them, but you can have me. Always." He says, "Okay, then Vero." "Yes, Lucas. We're glad you stopped." I did not understand at first. I say, "Stopped what?" There is a small pause. He says, "Being our mom." He says it quietly. He says it the way a 13-year-old says a sentence he has been practicing in the mirror. He says, "We knew. We always knew. Lily and I would sit on the steps after you put us to bed and we would whisper about it. We were too small to do anything. We thought maybe if we were really good, you could rest. So we tried to be really good. We weren't always." I'm sorry. I cannot speak for a long second. He says, "We always knew you weren't supposed to be doing it. We always knew that wasn't yours." I say, "Lucas." "Yes." "You were always good." He starts to cry. Quietly. The way I taught him to cry in the laundry room when he was 6 and Audrey had broken his favorite toy and he could not let the little one see. I let him cry. I do not rush in. When he is done, he takes a breath. And the breath is older than 13. He says, "We'll call again next week." I say, "Okay." I do not speak for 6 seconds. Then I say, "I love you, Lucas. Tell Lily I love her. Tell Audrey I love her. Tell Owen and Ivy and Theo and Poppy. Tell them every time. Okay. Goodbye, bud. Goodbye, Vero." I hang up. I sit on the couch. Wyatt comes out of the bedroom with 2 cups of tea. He sets one on the table in front of me. He sits down. He does not ask. I look at Lily's drawing over the toaster. I look at the 4 notebooks on the shelf. I look at the window where the east light is good in the morning. It turned out the hardest thing about leaving was not the leaving. It was learning at 22 that I was finally allowed to.